All right, Shalom. I want to start by giving our praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and also to their elders, the men that taught them. I pray the Lord have peace, blessings, and mercy upon the households of the hopeful elect. This is the brother Shamal Wan from the Great Millstone Houston Church, and I want to come with a lesson titled, "What can I learn from this?" And that stems from a conversation me and the brother Yachanan had. And basically he was telling me about, just dealing with customers, and me and him kind of in the same field, mechanics. But dealing with customers could be a fucking problem and a headache and this and that and, all types of shit. But throughout our conversation, the brother made a point. He said, but thinking about it, while I'm going through that shit, it's like, okay, I'm going through it, so, what can I get from this experience? Flipping it in a way, and applying the wisdom that we get from, the Lord giving us a quickened spirit, man. No longer just going through shit and looking mad and angry and just pissed off at the world, like this shouldn't happen to us, or I don't deserve this shit. No, but switching it and applying wisdom. Real quick, I got a precept, because just thinking about it off top, Baruch 4 in verse 28, "For as it was your mind to go astray from the Most High, so being returned, seek him 10 times more." So the fact that we went astray from the Lord, now we suffer the consequences. Now everything isn't going to be all great. Everything ain't going to be good and running smooth, calm, and collected. We're going to go through evils. We're going to experience shit. But the benefit of having that mind to actually acknowledge it and to try to apply the wisdom that we got already. And if that ain't it, we're going to try to do better next time. That's the mindset I got from that conversation. Not just, just why me or just mad. No, the Lord put you in this, and what did you get out of it type of mindset. So with that being said, I want to just get this real quick, and I pray it'll be edifying to the Lord's elect. Let's go here. This is Psalms chapter 119 and verse 71 in the NLT. It says, "My suffering was good for me, for it taught me to pay attention to your decrees." So in a sense, going through certain things, it is a benefit. And the benefit King David got from his suffering, how it says, "For it taught me to pay attention to your decrees." Getting, getting more tightening it up, fine tuning things, getting sharper, just applying yourself to the Lord's decrees. In the GNT, it says, "My punishment was good for me because it made me learn your commands." And just thinking about the things we go on a daily, like it says, next precept, thinking about it, how it said vexed Lot. He had to deal with the conversation, actually being around people. Matter of fact, let's go there. Let's go there. 1 second. Is it 2 Peter? 2 Peter chapter 2. And we'll jump in at verse 6. I just want to get to the point. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 6, it says, "In turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that after should live ungodly, and delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked." Real quick, let's get a word. Let's get that word, vexed, in verse 7. "And delivered just Lot," which means righteous, going into describing Lot. It says, "But vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked." That word conversations goes into a manner of life, the conduct or behavior. So, okay, so being vexed with the way that people were behaving, their morals, their way of life, their conversation, literal, the shit that they did that he would be around, he would have to see and hear. But this is that word vexed. So him dealing with that, it says oppressed on the outline of biblical usage, to tie down with toil, to exhaust with labor, to afflict or oppress with evils, to make trouble for, to treat roughly. And that describes how it was for Lot. You know, here it is, you seeking the Lord, you trying to stay on that right path. You know, you're gonna go through shit, but you have to have temperance, because Lot was around it seeking, you know, seeking the truth. Okay, it said just Lot. All right, it says vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked, verse 8. For that righteous man dwelling among them. So he had to physically, literally deal with that shit. You know, not just complaining about it. He actually applied something to it. He got through it. You know, and in just relating from what we can read, same mindset whenever we're around, you know, all types of shit just being out in the world. You know, it's like, what can I learn from this? Because we're reading about Lot. He was around it. You know, he didn't fold up. He didn't lose character. He got through it. But it says, for that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. So he was actually in the midst of it. And that just makes me think, just being at work around all these grown-ass fucking fruity men. A bunch of grown-ass men with families and children, but still do some of the most childish shit in most, you know, that faggot shit. Like men playing on each other, calling each other babies, trying to smack a nigga on his ass, like all type of shit like that goes on. We deal with shit like that. And mind you, how do we start off? Lot was literally in these cities. According to Revelation, it says we're in spiritual Sodom. So it's the same shit that goes on. That does vex our spirits. But, you know, instead of reacting to it, getting a ill reaction, nope. Having a mindset of, okay, what can I learn from this? And that shit is going to be boiling while you sit there and apply it. Because the scriptures say in what is that? Ecclesiastes 1:18, you know, basically having this wisdom and knowledge, it increases the level of grief that we have being in this world, man. Because we know the truth. And the shit we're around is not right. But we got to deal with it and suffer it and apply what's written in these scriptures. Apply the wisdom that the Lord gave us. You know? The Lord knows what he got us around. He knows what he got us in. It's like, okay, so now it's a test. How you want to see me react? Okay? About how applying these scriptures. That when Yahushua, what is that? Matthew 5:25, agree with thine adversary quickly. You know, just certain things like that. Being in the heat of the moment, what you gonna do? Have self-control, temperance. You know? But Psalms 119 and verse, what am I looking for? Hold on. It was a point. And deliver just the sin and vexing. I forgot the precept I was looking for. But anyway, 2 Peter 2:8 again, it says, for that righteous man dwelling among them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. Let's look up this word vexed in verse 8. That's different from verse 7. In the blue letter is G 928. On the outline of biblical usage, it says, number 2, it says, to question by applying torture, to vex with grievous pains of body or mind, to torment, to be harassed or distressed. Of those who, it gives an example. It says, of those who at sea are struggling with a headwind. So it's a battle, like a constant press. And it's not just physically. It says to vex with grievous pain of the body or the mind. All right. Oh, that's what it was. Ecclesiastes. Thinking about much grief. That's what it was. The water Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. Real quick. Ecclesiastes 1:18. It says, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Yeah, because it's more that you know and you understand that's, you know, pleasing unto the Lord. You increase that wisdom. You increase, you know, that knowledge pertaining to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah. In living in this world, it will be an increase of sorrow and an increase of grief, because just like Lot, going back to it, the definitions that it gave for that word vex in verse 8, 2 Peter 2:8. Let's double check. 2 Peter 2:8. Yep, that word vexed again. It says to vex with grievous pains of body or mind. You know? So, you know, just having that mindset of temperance, self-control. Like it mentions in the book of 2 Peter, really you could start at verse 1 and read down to verse 10. But I just wanted to get that, you know, just something real quick while I was on my spirit. So, you know, just having that mindset of what can I learn from this, you know, and a lot of it to help, you know, temperance has to be applied, you know, and patience. Matter of fact, let's see. 2 Peter chapter 1 in verse, I'm gonna just jump in here. At verse 5, you could really start at the top, but for time's sake, 2 Peter 1:5, it says, and beside this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge. So, you know, faith is the foundation, faith in Yahweh Shah. Then upon that virtue, I believe, goes into, you know, like the highest moral standards that one can have, you know, going into the goodness. Okay, then it says to virtue knowledge about the Lord, knowing, understanding the Lord, you know, seeking the Lord. The scriptures tell us, if we seek, matter of fact, let's get that. This is Matthew chapter 7. In verse 7, it says, ask and it shall be given you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. See? So going back to it, it says, in another precept just came to mind, how it says in James, the 1st chapter, if there's anything we lack and we, you know, sincerely ask the Lord, he's going to give it to us, man. You know? But going back to 2 Peter 1 in verse 6, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness. Just some traits to have that fit the topic of this lesson. But let me go to it. Let me see what the definitions say real quick. 2 Peter chapter 1 in verse 6, for that word temperance, in the blue letter is G1466. Outline of biblical usage, it says self-control, the virtue of one who masters his desires and passions, especially his sensual appetites. Yep. That was it for temperance. Now looking up patience. Patience. In the blue letter is G5281. It says waiting, steadfastness, constancy, endurance. In the New Testament, the characteristic of a man who is not swerved from his deliberate purpose and his loyalty to faith and piety by even the greatest trials and sufferings. And just fitting it to the topic, what can I learn from this? Whatever it is, whatever this can be, whatever type of suffering, whatever situation we may be in, that patience and temperance has to be applied. And 9 times out of 10 is some shit that, we would rather not go through, but if it's in our face, it's for a reason. It's an opportunity to level up. Matter of fact, like going back to the book of James, like whenever we do suffer, how does it say? James chapter 1 and verse 2, it says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience." So that's attached to our faith. We're gonna be tried. Our faith is gonna be tested. So therefore, we're gonna have to be paid. We're gonna have to, suffer through whatever comes our way, like it says in Sirach 2:2. "My son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation. And with doing so," verse 4, it says, "But let patience have her perfect work." Not reacting according to the flesh, but with the mindset that can help. What can I learn from this? So sitting down and enduring it. Man, Sirach 2, you can't avoid that one. How it says, "Make not haste in the time of trouble." Sirach chapter 2 and let's jump in at verse 3. It says, "Cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end." That's why I said in James 1 in verse 4, it says, "But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." Allowing it to play its course. Verse 4, back in Sirach 2 and 4. "Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state." Why? Verse 5, "For gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Believe in him, and he will help thee. Order thy way aright, and trust in him." And you could keep reading, but I'm gonna stop right there and just reflect back on the point of this lesson. Like me and the brother was talking, going through certain things throughout the day can be vexing, can be suffering. It's like, damn, but there's something to learn from it. Going back to the jump, King David said it, Psalms 119 and 71. It was good that he was afflicted, because he, basically it taught him the ways of the Lord. So I'll end it there. I pray this lesson was edifying to the Lord's elect. And, Lord willing, to the next time I say shalom.